right, Miss Emily. First, I just want to say thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be here with us. We've talked a couple times before this interview. I've always enjoyed talking to you, and I know what we're going to talk about today is super important, and that's time management for fiction authors, and that can be a huge pain point for a lot of people. But before we dive into that, for anybody who maybe not know who you are, haven't heard anything about you, or if you just want to give us a little bit of a background, who you are, what you do, kind of maybe why you got into the authoring world and wanting to help authors and stuff like that, and then we can kind of jump into it.
Absolutely. First of all, Philip, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to share with you and your audience today. So my background, my name is Emily Enger. I am a book marketing coach, meaning instead of doing done for you services, I help authors learn the book marketing process themselves. And my company is called Good Enough Book Marketing. I teach what I call minimalist marketing for authors who are overwhelmed by the too muchness that marketing often looks like, and are struggling to balance that with the huge time commitment that writing fiction books also takes. My background, before I got into the authoring business, is I was the communications director at a regional arts center in Minnesota. We served 9 rural counties and 3 Native American reservations. So it was a significant in size, and I helped authors, but also visual artists. So I was working with kind of just the creative space. And I did the marketing for the organization, but within that, there was a lot of helping the individual artists and writers who we were showcasing and helping them with marketing as well. So when I decided to stay home with my kids, and needed to start some kind of business from home that would still allow me to be here, it kind of transitioned really well into just focusing on writers, because I'm an English major. It's my academic background, and so writers are kind of they're my favorite people, and so I wanted to focus on writers. And I specifically work with authors of creative genres, so your fiction, your poetry, your creative nonfiction, which is why your summit focusing on fiction is really a good fit for me, because I noticed there was a lot of difference in kind of how you approach things if you're a nonfiction author of, let's say, prescriptive nonfiction versus writing a science fiction book. Like it's a different game. And so that is actually my specialty. And when it comes to the time management piece, being my background was in balancing the marketing responsibilities for a big organization, that's just something that came naturally to me. And so when I saw a lot of my clients struggling with that piece, it became kind of accidentally a focus of mine, to be able to kind of share the tips that I use to navigate my professional life, that they could copy and use themselves.
Yeah, isn't it funny? I kind of fell headfirst into email marketing without even really doing it on purpose. I was like
Uh-huh.
throwing something against the wall to see what stuck, and nothing ever kind of gained traction. It just happened one day, just without any real purpose behind it, just kind of fell headfirst into email marketing. But so that's really cool, actually. And also that you get to stay home with your babies and also work and bring some money home. I'm sure your husband probably works away from the house.
Yeah.
So
Well,
that's
funny you say that. He works from home too, but he's a woodworker, and I bring this up only because it is slightly relevant. So we have our own company, and it through of his woodworking, and he's really an artist himself. Only his medium is wood. And so even in like working from home, I'm still, and I do the marketing for that. So I'm still marketing creative work, and just understanding how creative work and talking about creative work is different than talking about other industries, but you can make a real living with it. And I'm really passionate about, like, these are real jobs. Artists are people who can make a living with their arts and support their families with their arts, whether it's the woodworking we do or the writing my clients do.
yeah, I think the saying of being a broke or like a starving artist, I think that's a little in the past, right? Because of everything, all the information and resources that we
Yeah.
have at our fingertips. I mean, you can learn almost anything you want by going into a YouTube rabbit hole, right?
Right. Oh
And
yeah. Oh
it's
yeah.
all free and it's all from experts and stuff like that. It's really cool. Summits or conferences like this is another really great way to do it when you're talking, I get the opportunity and privilege to interview experts across the
Mhm.
authoring industry, but in different, aspects of the field. So it gives you really unique insight, and it gives people like this bucket and well of information in one place that I think is super, super helpful for authors, whether you're just getting started, you're aspiring, or maybe you've got a little bit more footing under you. Um, but in terms of marketing, and you said you kind of focused on this like minimalist approach, which is really cool because marketing can get super complicated if you want it to, like the most complicated, right? You can make it as complicated as you want. um and there's all these different moving pieces and stuff like that. So like for an author, for like a fiction author, like when it comes to trying to manage all these things while also staying true to your craft and writing and stuff like that, but marketing has to play a key in that, if you want to be successful. Like how in the world does somebody manage that time difference between those two?
Yes, that's the big question.
That is.
Um, so so there's kind of two I've kind of two there's kind of two questions in there. So let me kind of give you two answers. Because one is to just talk about my minimalist approach with marketing. Because I don't want marketing to be overwhelming. And one of the ways you manage the time is to just do a time audit and make sure you aren't doing too much, because there is such a thing as doing too much. And most authors do not have a background in marketing. You are not expected to have,
Right.
taken marketing courses in college. I did, besides working in marketing, and so they don't understand maybe the foundations of like what is the role of marketing, and why is one channel an opportunity in marketing successful for me and the others not, and all those things. And so I really boil marketing down to two things. There's only two pieces you need, to have a successful marketing strategy that will give you growth of some kind, to make sure the ball is moving forward in it. And that is one, to maintain a relationship with the fans that you already have, but at the same time to do at least one thing that puts you in front of new eyeballs in some kind of consistent fashion as well. So you can pick that. Let's just say it's a month, just for ease of math and talking about it. Every 30 days, you do a mental check in and you say, what did I do this month that nurtured my fans and gave them some kind of connection point with me this month? But also, what did I do that made it so somebody who's never heard of me heard my voice this month? And just make sure you don't drop those two things. You will grow. And depending on what those pieces look like for you, how you choose to connect with fans, how you choose to get in front of new eyeballs, the amount of growth is going to vary, or how firmly you press on the gas and how much time you dedicate to those things. The amount of growth will vary. But that is the base that you can use to make sure you grow at least something, and that you're not just treading water with your career. So if you can focus on the core pieces of that, ditch anything that is a little too much or beyond that, that's going to help with time management. The other piece is time blocking. I don't know if you've heard of time blocking before. It's pretty common, so I'm imagining most of your audience has. But honestly, it's so basic. But again, everything comes down to the basics. Like, we have gotten so crazy as a society that we've just forgotten the foundation principles of everything in the world, it seems like.
True.
And you just have to stop getting distracted, right? So you have to block off time. Like, this is just my writing time. Every Wednesday afternoon is just my marketing time, and you turn off your emails and you turn off your phone if you can. Not everybody can, and I can't. I have kids. If it's my kid's school calling, I have to be accessible. But to the extent that you can, just focus on what you're going to focus on and have it in a schedule, so you know this is what this day is going to look like for me, and nothing else is going to get done from this period except what I have decided.
Yeah, that makes a lot. I like the idea of, and I totally agree with you on this, by the way. Nurturing who you have, you cannot forget about those people because right now that's your core. But
Mhm.
if you're not constantly getting new people, like this well will dry up, and you're just going to get to a point of this like stagnation, like stagnant, no
Yes.
growth, this plateau. And like you want to kind of be on that constant incline if you can. I'm always of mind, and you tell me what you think about this. And even like with time management's kind of like a day to day thing, but like I always have the long term in mind. I know I've talked to authors and people in different spaces of like they want this quick win or this overnight success, and like they see all these people that are quote unquote overnight successes, and it's like that's not really the case, right? Like
No,
you
it's
don't know
not
what they
real.
went through. It's not a real thing. Like unless you win the lottery, you're first off, that's not success, that's luck. But like there's all this stuff happening in the background day by day, month by month, year by year. Like it takes time. And I think authors, just from my experience with talking to them, uh, most of them do not think long term. They're kind of just thinking in the moment. But I think just kind of an idea that's kind of spurning off what you're talking about. Like you should be thinking in the moment, but you should also be thinking of the larger picture. If you want this to be a career and you want to be successful in it. So in terms of like the time management aspect, you talk about minimalist approach. How do you do that without being on your computer for 10 hours a day or not having room to do anything else because, maybe 3 days a week, you're focusing on your marketing. It's taking 8 hours a day. And then the other 3 or 4 days you're writing and it takes 2 or 3 hours a day and you feel burnt out or you feel like you're putting way too much effort in too quickly. Like from a minimalist approach, like how do you handle this with people?
Okay, so burnout is one of like the things I'm most passionate about.
Okay.
I think everybody in our society right now, especially post pandemic, like I think we are all culturally suffering from collective burnout at the same time, which is, a problem for society and us as individuals. But especially with creatives, like we are so cruel to ourselves. Like we will sacrifice ourselves for forever. We'll just never stop. So productivity, and this is a little bit of a non-traditional answer, but something that I swear by. Productivity is tied to good health. Okay, so if you are struggling with time management and you are burnt out and there's just, too many irons in the fire, there's obviously the first thing is to see how many irons you can take out of the fire. I mean, we all have to do an audit on our lives regularly and be like, hey, I can't do this, I can't do that. Um, and pull out what you can. Unfortunately, a lot of us are sitting in a situation where we can't. That's how we got into this, situation. We didn't want to put too many irons in the fire. We ended up having to. Um, so first is, weed out everything that you can weed out. But then you really need to start looking at things that are like your nutrition. Are you exercising? Things that you would not think that have anything to do with time management. Um, but to me go a very, very long way in helping you handle uh, burnout, well, prevent burnout, and handle it if you have it already. I Writers will sit at their computers all day long, especially if they're full time. Some writers have a different 9 to 5 job, right? And maybe hopefully they're not staring at a computer for that job, and they get a chance to look away from a screen. But the vast majority of jobs even out there these days are all looking at a screen. You have to go on a 30-minute walk every single day. Stop working, even though you're burnt out and you're overwhelmed and you think you have to get something done. No, you actually have to stop working and you have to go take a walk. I don't think you should eat at your desk. I think you should take a lunch break, like a real, honest to God lunch break. Go to your kitchen, make a lovely meal, make sure there's protein in it. Um, and then take a walk after, because actually walking after within an hour after you eat helps you digest the food better. It also is great for hormone health, which is going to make you show up back at your desk with a lot more energy and feeling a lot better, and it's going to make it so you are able to better handle all the responsibilities that are on your plate.
Yeah, no pun intended, right?
Yeah.
I've never, that's a really interesting point. I've actually never had an interview with somebody where they start talking about like nutrition and exercise, which to me
It's
is
everything.
everything. I have a
It is.
background in exercise science and
Oh,
kinesiology. So I've been a
you
personal
know.
trainer, I've taken nutrition classes, and myself, like, I know when I'm out of whack, if I'm low on energy, I could always blame my two kids for that because they're always waking me up and not letting me rest. But like, take them out of the equation, but
Mhm.
it's something's off. I'm not exercising like I know I should be. My diet is crap. I'm eating fast food because it's easy, or I'm not. I hear this all the time. You're so focused on you don't eat it all. You're so focused that you're doing what you're supposed to be getting done that you just forget all these other things. Sleeping well. I mean, that's probably one of the biggest ones is getting rest. Um,
Mhm.
and you made a really good point, and I think this is really, really crucial. Is you should have different locations for different activities.
Mhm.
You said don't eat at your desk. Your desk is for working or writing. Your bed is for sleeping. Maybe a chair out in the living room is where you read. Your kitchen table is where you eat. Like you need, and I've heard this from like 7 and 8, 9 figure entrepreneurs where it's like you have to have these dedicated workstations. You can't do
Yes.
everything in one place, right? Because
I sorry, I teach that
yeah,
even with marketing. Like don't do your marketing at your desk where you do your writing. Do it at the kitchen table if you can't afford a second desk. Do it somewhere else. You need to have this cozy creative space for the writing of your books. But when you wear a marketing hat, you need to kind of trick your brain into being like, "Oh, now I'm a business person today," by just being in a different space.
yeah, and I do, and sometimes because I'm on like my desktop right now, but I also have a laptop. Um, this is where I do the majority of my work. I like to write on my laptop because I like to be in a different location. But even like when I'm feeling burnt out in this closet that I'm in, I'll just take my laptop and I'll just move a location and just
Mhm.
it's the simplest, silliest sounding thing, but it can absolutely kind of respark that drive and that energy and give you some more mental clarity because you're not in the same box or same spot that you've been dreading going to every day because you know you have to do something like it's simple answer of just changing your location I think is super key and like a awesome point that I don't hear a lot of people talk about, which is really, really cool.
Yeah, well,
um
to me, it's just there's a legacy. There's a huge legacy inside of this industry of kind of believing, that the drunken, disorganized writer is the true creative genius.
right,
and and we all have that image in our mind because it was true historically, but they also didn't know back then what we know about nutrition today. um I do think that Hemingway was a brilliant writer with a really terrible family life because of his alcoholism, among other things. But you don't have to be Hemingway to be a brilliant author. And in fact, you probably won't be Hemingway. Nobody gets to have what he had. And so we have to do it a different way. And I actually think creativity is tied to health much more than it's, and this is coming from, someone who's had two kids. I'm pregnant right now with my third. Nobody knows sleep deprivation like I do. I promise you. Like, I have had bad sleepers and uncomfortable pregnancies, and I had to just like all of my creativity dried up when I couldn't sleep because of my children. And once I started to finally sleep again, like I felt started to feel human again. Like we need that stuff. You need to sleep well. You need to eat well. And I would also add hormone health, in particular for women, is really important. And this is a big piece of how I manage my time. Um, is understanding my cycle because men, you guys, your hormones and also your energy resets every 24 hours, and that's just not how it works if you are a menstruating woman. If you're postmenopause, it does. But for all the rest of us in my age group, your energy, and that includes your creativity, is tied to your menstrual cycle. So you need to be tracking your period, and you need to be understanding what phase of your cycle you're in. And there's some great resources out there about cycle syncing, where you can learn what phase you're more creative in, what phase you're more analytical in, because our bodies as women are fluctuating constantly. And so that's another piece of the time management, is understanding when I'm going to do what task for me looks different than it does for my husband. He can do the same thing every day, like clockwork, over and over. It doesn't mean he doesn't get bored, but he can handle it. And for me, there are days that I can run circles around my husband when it comes to energy. And then there are days I can hardly get off the couch. I'm so exhausted. And it's because my cycle is based on a monthly system and his is based on a day system. So understanding your body really makes a difference in you managing your time.
That's right. This is a Health 101 class now, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah,
Not where I thought
but
this
you didn't
conversation was
expect
going.
that.
No, it's staying. My interviews stay raw and authentic. I don't care what people think. Um, so back to first off, congratulations on being pregnant again. That's
Thank you.
awesome.
Thank you.
That's really, really cool. So adding a third kid to the mix, that'll be fun. Um,
Yeah, I'm crazy. I don't know what
yeah,
I'm thinking some
yeah, I
days,
don't either.
but
Yeah, it's okay. We're here for you.
thank you.
So back to the time management. This is probably a question people are thinking. Like, is there I'll just take like when you're from your expertise when you're working with people, so you can kind of draw from your own experience with
Mhm.
dealing with real authors. Is there some kind of time, like frame or allotted time that you suggest people put towards a certain task during the day or week or month? Like time management is one thing, but then like to kind of break it down more kind of on like a micro scale, are you breaking that because you mentioned time blocking, which
Mhm.
by the way, most ultra successful people, they don't have to-do lists, they time block because it's
Exactly.
like they know every single day that it can get crazy, but like every hour of every day they know what they're doing, so they're not distracted and doing that, like doing 10 things at once and then nothing gets done.
Mhm.
That's one of my biggest issues. um so like is there a way to do like a lot certain amount of time for certain tasks and stuff like that that you see that's really effective and works for most people?
Yeah, so the number one tip that I talk about authors with all the time is you are a writer first and foremost before you are a marketer. I know that I'm here to teach you marketing, but like I respect that your primary job is to write really engaging, fascinating, beautiful words. And if you're not doing that, you don't have a business. So that everything gets built around that. Every writer is a little different of when they feel most creative, but I find most people feel most creative in the morning. So yeah, so that's what I suggest, and that means with the time blocking, yeah, you're right. If you look at the calendar of somebody who's doing a good job time blocking, it looks overwhelming. Like all their like the blocks of like color that they've kind of blocked out on their calendar because they're doing certain tasks. Um, the bulk has to be your writing hat. And you also have to be flexible enough that if the writing is going well, you can keep writing. Because God forbid, oh, the time block is over now because it's noon. I'm going to break for lunch and then do my marketing in the afternoon. But you're on a roll with a story that, you were struggling with yesterday. Like, keep going, like, keep feeding the muse. Um, Absolutely. So writing in the morning, usually marketing, it really depends on the author and how much marketing they're doing, because again, I often teach a minimalist approach and I have authors who like to do a very little bit and then I have authors who like to kind of check in with their marketing on a regular basis. But I usually put email, like responding to email and marketing kind of in the same bundle, because it's mostly what we call reactive work, and you don't want to get distracted by reactive work when you're doing kind of anything forward momentum, like writing new words on the page, and that's usually like an after lunch thing. Um, for some authors, and this is the one I prefer if you can pull it off, not everybody can, they put all of their marketing into one day. Right. So they just like Wednesday is my marketing day. I do hump day marketing, or Mondays I do marketing. But they're of course scheduling out things. They're not like never doing marketing again. They're just writing all the marketing material and then scheduling that newsletter or that Facebook post to run on Thursday and then another one the next Monday or whatever. But they're doing the actual labor of the work or recording those TikTok videos all in one day. And then it's just a break from the computer, at least in the way that writing would be. um and it's all done at once, and then if you are having a really good writing day, you don't have to feel like, oh gosh, now I have to switch to my marketing hat, because that's just going to be a different day anyway. And you can just write. That's the ideal, I guess. When it comes to email, you can't check your email once a week, so that I still would leave into
Yeah.
the afternoon,
Yeah.
or even the evening. But I want people to time block for their family. Like, I don't it's not a bad thing that you and your spouse watch TV for hours after the kids go to bed. Like, you don't need to be working then. Like, you shouldn't be. You should be doing something fun. You should be turning off the brain for a little while to rest. Don't think that you can't do that. Um, which is why you have to have a little bit of flexibility. Which is not necessarily what people who teach time blocking usually teach. They're a little bit more strict and like, this is this time, this is this time. But I think for those of us that are running in a creative headspace, we don't want the muse to totally control us, but we do have to follow our muse a little bit. And so if it's like the calendar versus the muse, like the muse has to be the leader. So I always try to like leave a little bit of gap for that.
Yeah, that makes all the sense in the world. I think one of the things you said at the beginning of that was spot on is you're a writer first. You could be the best marketer in the world. If you have nothing to market, it doesn't matter, right?
No.
So like if you would rather when when you're an author, the more books you have, obviously the better chance you have at success. You could write 20 crappy books and never be successful, but like if you're serious and you're honing and constantly learning and just trying to make your craft better and refining it, and you write more books and then you start to trickle that marketing in and then you start getting better at marketing, like this is where people take off. This is where that like overnight success where maybe they just published their 8th book or their 10th book and now everything's finally clicking because they spent the time to write and
Mhm.
then they started focusing on marketing and they probably figured out a way how to manage those two, like the
Yeah.
purpose of this topic, the conversation. Like no successful author out there, I won't say no successful author, I would say most successful authors out there are probably pretty good at time management, right? So
I think they have to be.
have to be like this. How could you
Mhm.
not be, right? Like you just like I know for a fact like Mark Dawson, one of the most successful self-published authors of
Yeah.
the last decade, maybe ever, but like of the last decade for sure. He's kind of the one that started the, well, Chandler Bolt too, but like Mark Dawson being a fiction author, this self-publishing kind of storm that's taken over the market.
Yeah.
Um, the last I heard, and this is straight from him, like on a podcast he did or something, he writes from eight to, this is his every day. He writes from 8 to 12. He takes a lunch, and then from 1 to 5, he's email, he's working on marketing, he's doing,
Yeah.
he sells courses and stuff like, so he's doing that stuff. So it's like writer hat in the morning,
Mhm.
marketer slash business hat in the afternoon, and he is as successful as they come. Um, I know this guy, he's an author, but he writes nonfiction because he's a big time entrepreneur. But his name's Alex Ramosi, and he became he developed a net worth of 100 million by the time he was 30, and he talks time blocking, and he says I don't take any calls before like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I wake up at like 6. I write if I'm working on a book from like 6 to like 9 or 10. And then I'll do some stuff there, and then I'll do my meetings and stuff in the afternoon. And then he cuts off his time at 4:30. Him and his wife
Mhm.
go to the gym and they go to dinner every single day. Like this is their structure, and they're
Yeah.
hyper successful. Um, so I just think it speaks volumes, not just for authors, but if you want to be successful in a business, which if you're looking at being a successful author, it's a business. And which is another thing I talk to authors all the time, and that's not really a mindset they typically have. I didn't have that mindset early on, but it's a business. And if you treat it like a business, you need to run it like a business. And if you stick with it long enough and you do the right things, it can turn into a viable business, right?
Yes.
So I think a lot of the things you said there were like spot on and probably hit people really hard that are listening right now because I think that's probably not said enough and probably needs to be heard more.
Yeah, I hope so. I think, everybody's life is different. And so not everybody has the ability to, write all morning, market all afternoon. Um, if you have other life responsibilities, if you're taking care of elderly parents, if you have little kids and you have limited childcare, like there's a lot of reasons that, some people can't quite do what we're talking about. And so I do want to be like encouraging to say like it doesn't have to be that much if you can't handle that, but if you can time block a little bit. I was able to find daycare for my youngest, who's not at school age yet, for 2 days a week. Um, just to give myself 2 full days to time block for my business. because I she's interrupting me all the time. I just can't
No, I don't believe
I
it.
get it done. And it doesn't mean I don't only work those 2 days. It's just the stuff that I have to fully concentrate on. I know for sure I've got those 2 days somehow. And so just finding what you can do within your situation that allows you some distraction free time. Turning off the phone when you can, turning off all notifications. Like, I don't even know why we have notifications anyway. I think they're so evil. Like, which we lose focus way too easily as a society. Just and it's technology is not helping that. But
Which is why I don't like social media, by the way.
good for
I'm not
you.
on social media. I don't use
Mm-hmm.
social media. I'll run ads for the business side of things, but like
Yeah.
because I know I've never been a big fan of Facebook, but I just know from talking to people, like if they see something that's like relevant to what they're needing to do, but then they just see one post or
Mhm.
something pops up that their friend you're down an hour long rabbit hole and you never come back.
Yep.
Like,
And even if you think that you don't, it's not just being on the phone physically. Like we do loops in our mind of like repeating things. And this isn't just a social media thing, but this is just we talked about health earlier, mental health too. Like if something's bothering you or you see something and you can't stop thinking about it, it's just going to loop over and over and over in your mind when you're trying to work. And so you're feeding a beast that you don't want to be feeding right now. You want to stay distraction free for that reason.
yeah, I 100% agree. So let me ask you this question. Is it okay because like you said, everybody has different situations. You don't have to be like as strict as humanly possible, especially when starting out. I'm always of mind, and this is why I tell people, like if I'm teaching email marketing or something, like just get your foot in the water, just get dip your toes
Mhm.
in, get a little like get used to it, and then you can start to build on that as you get used to the systems and the process and you're more comfortable. Then you can start to kind of scale things up because I think simplicity scales.
Yes.
And you being a minimalist approach for marketing, like that's
Hmm.
perfect because I'm the same way. I always tell people like the simpler you can make it, the better it's going to be, not only now, but in the long run. Like
Yeah.
it just, unless you have some Fortune 500 company and you've got 1,000 people working for you and it gets
Right.
complex, like if it's just you, like make it as simple as you can. Because simplicity still works today. I don't care what anybody says. Like the most successful people are doing the simplest things in the world. And it's something that I don't think enough people focus on because of the new shiny object, the new coaching pro, the new course, the new software. Like it's like just focus on what works. And this is what I do is like go study somebody that's doing it successfully, see what they're doing, and then just model that for yourself because the chances are what they're doing is not rocket science because
Right.
it's not like there's some hyper like I don't know Mark Dawson personally. He'll never see this, but like if he did, apologies, Mark. But I don't think you're the smartest human in the world. I know you have a background in law and you're a lawyer, so you're probably pretty sharp. But I think you would say you're probably not the smartest author to ever
Mhm.
write a book. But he's clearly figured something out, and he just continuously does it. And he just keeps repeating the same process, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, and just things keep moving. So I
That's what
think that's
marketing
huge.
is.
Yeah.
And again, I was talking at the beginning about how most authors don't actually understand the foundation of marketing. We think, we certainly are on the receiving end of marketing all the time, even something traditional like TV advertising. And so then we think we see and understand what's going on. Um, but marketing isn't about trying new things. Obviously, there is some of that. There's something called market testing, but foundational marketing is about repeating what already works. Any company they look and they assess all the different marketing avenues that they have tried and they look where they got the most results from and then they dump the majority of the next quarter's budget into the thing that gave them the greatest returns and they just keep doing more of that. And that's how you grow is you Mark Dawson figured out a system. Now he repeats his system, and that's marketing right there. And so again, marketing doesn't have to be overwhelming in that regard. Now, finding your perfect system might take some tweaking, but once you figure out what works for you, you don't have to kill yourself on the altar of marketing your books. It should it should fit in really comfortably to your daily life. I mean, Man, when I got the job as the communications director at the art center I was telling you about, I remember at the beginning feeling very intimidated, like everyone does with a new job, because there's all this pressure to perform well. And our art center, the foundation of what we did was events. So it was a lot of event marketing. And I remember feeling just the weight of responsibility, like if nobody comes to this event, it's all my fault and I'm going to get fired, right? If nobody walks through the door. And it never happened, by the way. People always came. And by the end, like by the time I quit, like it was so easy. I was it was just like clockwork. Oh, there's an event. I knew exactly when I wrote the press release. I kind of had a system for the press release. I knew exactly which media outlets I contacted. I knew exactly I knew exactly when I was going to do the direct mailings. I already had spreadsheets with everyone's address that, everything automated. Like it was just this rinse and repeat system. And I would feel like I wasn't even doing that much work. And then, 30, 40 people would show up to this event and then kind of be a little bit surprised every time, like, oh yeah, that's right. I did get the word out about this event because it became part of my everyday life. Um, that's what professional marketers do. They're not the kind of Mad Men, era stereotype where they all stay super late and, smoke cigarettes and get drunk in the office and, have sex with each other and then scramble trying to like be creative and figure out a way to sell their product at the, ninth hour, the 11th hour, excuse me. Professional marketers actually are much more prepared than that, and they have a system, and it just kind of it's a wheel that turns and it's always turning.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I know I was just watching a video today by Russell Brunson, who started and runs ClickFunnels. It's a $200 million a year company. They're massive. And
Hmm.
he was teaching at his funnel hacking live event that happens every year. And he just asked a question. And he was like, we just had this issue. And he's like, how many marketers in here figure out a process that works and then you stop doing it? And like 80% of the room's hands shut up. They're like you just gotta, like, if you find something that works, double, triple, quadruple down
Hmm.
on it and just do more of it. And which comes back to simplicity. And that
Exactly.
it's simple doesn't mean easy. And typically the saying is like simple, not easy, but like once you figure out the simple process, it becomes easier. And then you just dive headfirst and double down on that process and just keep doing that. And I think that's really important. So in terms of like marketing your book, I'm curious to get your kind of feedback and ideas on this. Like, let's take the writer hat off and let's put the marketing hat on.
Mhm.
Where are these people going to find new eyeballs to get their books in front of new readers? Like, where are the best places? Where do you suggest people? Like, is there a system or a process that you kind of have that helps authors keep it minimal and simple?
Yes. Well, my favorite is publicity, which is media attention. It's earned media. Um, I think that if you can be sending pitches, by the way, podcasts are media. So if you even just send pitches to your favorite podcasts and you send them, on a semi-regular basis, that means you're always, you know, a percentage of those people are going to say yes, right? And so, there's always going to be like a podcast interview that you are doing that goes to your target audience. Um, and it's also really great for that new eyeball kind of approach because there is a saying that, yeah, publicity doesn't sell products, which I think is fair. It depends on the level of publicity. I would argue small publicity does not sell a product, but large publicity absolutely does. If you got your book on the Today Show, like I've bought books because the author was interviewed on the Today Show. Your book is going to sell. If you go to a regional podcast and after the podcast airs, are you going to see a ton of results? Not necessarily, but what you do see is a bump in wherever you're nurturing, right? Your social media, your newsletter. You see people looking you up after publicity. And that's really the goal with that new eyeballs. It's like you're just trying to get your name out there to make that new connection, to make sure new people start hearing about you. And then if they're curious, kind of jump on board, and follow you wherever you do your nurturing. And then suddenly your nurturing bubble is growing and your audience has probably heard the rule of seven. It's pretty common out there, which is the idea that customers need 7 touch points with something before they will make a purchase, before they convert. It's much higher than that, but it's called the rule of 7 because back originally when the study was done, and I couldn't even tell you when that was, a long time ago, it was just 7. But now, thanks to the internet, our attention spans are worse. So it takes more than 7. So, of course, the first time somebody hears you on a podcast, they're not going to go buy your book yet because that was just one touch point. But all you are doing is kind of trying to get more people into the fold. And I love publicity for that. And I love podcasts in particular because there's time. There's, it's not a 2.5 minute quick segment is part of like a TV recorded thing. It's certainly not a 90-second, Instagram reel or TikTok video. It's usually half an hour to even an hour and a half interview where the people listening really get to know you well, as they're listening to you. And so that's my personal favorite way of getting in front of new eyeballs. Of course there are others, but that's just my favorite.
I think podcasts, obviously in today's, back, it's actually, you don't have to go that far back before when podcasts weren't really a thing. And then Joe Rogan came onto the scene and changed all of that for everybody
Not
and has
everyone's
the
got a
largest
podcast.
podcast in the world. But he'll have people on that have never written a book in their entire life. They're big game hunters. They're ex-military and they wrote a book on self-defense and protection and stuff. They'll come on Joe Rogan's podcast one time. Now, this is the difference between, like you said, like a regional podcast,
Yeah.
like small reach versus big reach, like a Joe
Mhm.
Rogan podcast. And nobody listening to this is probably ever going to be on a Joe Rogan podcast, but like they're on there one time for an hour and a half, 2 hours, automatic, like New York Times #1
Oh yeah, their
bestseller,
life is forever changed. Yeah, he
changed in
would
an
be
instant.
considered big media. The big
Yes.
media will sell books. Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah. So I think that's awesome. So like I'm gonna play devil's advocate here and say
Yes.
like I'm really introverted. I'm gonna play a character here. I'm
Mhm.
introverted, I'm shy, I don't feel comfortable reaching out to people. I don't want to be on a podcast. I don't want to talk on camera or anything like that. Like where do I go? Like what's my option now? Because I don't think publicity is something I'm comfortable doing. Or do you
That's
just tell
fair.
that person to suck it up and do it anyways?
No, I
I didn't
don't.
think you would.
No, especially because again, we're talking about creative people. Your business, your livelihood is based on your creativity. And as much as I do believe everyone should get out of their comfort zone a little bit, I always try to reach for that rung above you, but not 7 rungs above you. And so if you are nervous and you are outside your comfort zone too much, I think your creativity will dry up. Like I think that it's just going to shut down everything in your nervous system. So no, I don't think that you should force yourself to. I think you should look at advertising. If you don't want to put yourself out there personally, I think a really great so at that point you're probably not on social media either for that person. Doing some Amazon ads, social media ads if you want, kind of like you do, Philip. You don't have to have a profile, but you can still take out an ad. And then nurturing through a newsletter is a very, very easy or simple, let's use that word, that's better, a simple way to not maybe overexpose yourself if you're more reserved.
Which I think this is one of the reasons why I love email. I'm
Yeah.
not super reserved and I don't mind sharing stuff with people. And for people who join my newsletter, and this is either even for my book side and my business side, like I share deeply personal stories of
Mhm.
like things that maybe majority of people wouldn't feel comfortable sharing. But to go along with that, I would never share this stuff on social media. I
Yeah.
would only do it in the intimate environment that I have with my newsletter list. And I've built that connection and you get this bond with these people. And if I was naturally more shy and reserved in terms of what I share, like that would be the perfect avenue for me. It's just focus on my email list. I do it anyways, but like if I was opposite of how I am now, like that would be my home. That would be my safe place because
Yeah.
these people have trusted their information with me to be on my list. They can unsubscribe anytime and people unsubscribe all the time. Like that's not an issue. But like this is where I share personal insight into who I am, things that have happened to me, mistakes I've made, people I've lost, like all these different things. Even if it doesn't have to do with like book marketing or anything like that, like I just share personal stories because I think even in 2023, people want to do business, so to speak, with people.
They
Like
do. Oh,
It's just
100%.
you they wanna be, and I preach this all the time, being authentic and transparent and not trying to put on this facade or this character, which I did early on, and it was not pretty, and I finally changed to, as you see, I say this almost in every interview, I'm wearing a backwards hat and pink headphones, so it's like I'm not Mr. Suit and Tie,
Yeah,
which is how I tried to be early on because I thought that's how I had to be. I thought I had to fit in this mold, and now I'm like, I do everything I can to be the person outside the mold, right?
right.
And you mentioned something which I think is crucial and a really good point that you said is you try to get people out of their comfort zone, maybe not so far out that it crushes their creativity or paralyzes them to not take
Mhm.
any action.
Right.
But to me, I'm always looking at ways to get outside my comfort zone because I truly believe that your comfort zone is where dreams go to die. And I think it's like if you I'm gonna make a t-shirt. That's probably already a t-shirt, but like if you're constantly doing the same things you've always done, Albert Einstein said this, I think, is the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result, right? Like that's not how that works. Like you have to change something. And it usually requires stepping out of your comfort zone on some level. You don't have to be as drastic as maybe I do with things, but I think your point of kind of trying to step out of your comfort zone and kind of baby steps in different areas, whether it's with your writing or it's with your marketing, and just kind of slowly do it, I think that can pay dividends for the author in the long term.
I agree. No, I do too.
Yeah. So we'll get that t-shirt made and we'll send it out to all attendees. Just kidding.
I love it.
Be a free gift. Um, Okay, cool. I'm trying to think, see if I've got any other questions on. I know we've talked about more than just time management, but I think a lot of things that we ended up going towards were super important and key, and probably won't be spoken on other uh, interviews. So I think that's awesome. Is there anything that you think we haven't touched on in terms of this topic of conversation that we should make sure we cover?
Maybe systems a little bit.
Okay.
So one thing I do get a lot of questions on is like, should I get like a daily planner, or is there a certain program, like a management program software that you recommend, et cetera, et cetera. And I gotta say, like, I've tried a lot of different platforms that are supposed to help you stay organized. I never used them because I didn't want to log into like another third party thing. I would forget, right? I did, however, one thing that I use that I love is called Streak Pipelines, Streak, and it is a third-party plugin to Gmail specifically. So this only helps Gmail users. But it's essentially it's a CRM platform, which is a customer relationship management software type thing, where you basically you create columns with usually it'd be like a customer's name, and then you'd move them to down the journey until they had made a sale. But I use it for a lot of other things. I don't really use it for that. I do use it as a to-do list, although we did talk about earlier, like don't get caught up in to-do lists too much because those can just kind of kill
I
you.
do them all the time.
But just as a writing down of stuff I don't want to forget, because
Yeah,
especially being pregnant, that like happens a lot.
100%.
Um, and here's why I like it. I don't like recommend it. I'm not like paid by them or anything, but the reason I found that that one worked when no others did is because it syncs into my Gmail, and I use my Gmail for everything. And so when I open my email, I'm also opening this kind of spreadsheet of stuff that, that I need to remember for my business. And that's why that works for me. And so I don't have a specific tool I recommend except to say like whatever you choose, like try to find something that is part of what you're already doing. Um, I know a lot of people try to stay offline with stuff like that. They like to write with pen and paper. That's great too, especially if it can stay on your desk. But the idea of baking something fancy and buying an expensive planner, and then by the way, those take forever to fill out because they you kind of have to do like months in advance in order to like figure it out, and then or logging into something like I think one of the ones I have is monday.com or ClickUp, or they're all great. Trello I've used. I'm not bashing them. I thought they worked great. I just found myself not using them and not logging in because I had no other purpose to log into that platform. So why would I? Because I just kept forgetting. So just try to make your life is simpler if it's all kind of in roughly the same place, right? And if you're not managing 30 million accounts in 30 million different places.
Yeah, I think you mentioned this at the beginning. Either you mentioned this at the beginning or I watched this on a video. So you'll have to remind me if you said this at the start. Yeah, I think you did because it's talked about like if you feel overwhelmed with too many things, you did say this, figure out what you can remove, right?
Yes.
So like
Mhm.
to we're gonna go back, we're gonna harp simple. I might just make the title of this interview just to say simple.
Mhm.
um and it's like find the things that are sucking your time out and figure out how to remove those or push them to a non-work section of your day or the streak. I've used Trello before and I really like Trello. I think plugins can be great because then you don't have to actually like leave your Gmail. Like you can just pop it up probably in that same screen or it just pulls it up in another tab. I've used Trello and it's just like, here's my daily to do.
Yep.
Here are my clients I'm working on. I've done this for them. I'll just move them over to done or
Mhm.
my book's on the first draft. I just revised it for the first time. Now it's in this column. Like that can be really simple. And it doesn't take that much time once you get used to it. They're not really hard platforms to understand. I know a lot of authors are kind of non-techie, which is, that's okay. But a lot of these platforms, you can find the right ones. And I'm not telling you, please don't go on some Google rabbit hole and look up 1,000 different tools and then never do anything. And you feel so overwhelmed because you're like, well, is this one better than this one? Or what about this one? Or this one? Now I need this one and this one. And it's just like, then nothing gets done. Right. But I think that's a really good point is kind of having a way to kind of just structure things out where you even if you're not using it for that purpose, just I'm going to work out at this time or on Monday, Wednesday, Friday,
Mhm.
I'm working out at 11 to 12 and just having that it kind of includes that time blocking but also has it in a place that's really simple and it stays in one place. I'm a huge pen and paper guy. I
Mhm.
love it so much. I will always use pen and paper till the day I die, but there are things that I know need to be kind of living inside my computer that I can just quickly pull up and see when I need to and stuff like that. So tools like that can be super powerful.
And if you already like have a calendar that you sync, a lot of other business stuff to, and especially because we're talking about time blocking more than to-do lists anyway, using your calendar for those same purposes, even like a to-do list, works. And then it's all in one place, right? It's less about, the to-do list and more about, well, I know that every day from 3 to 4:30 I'm doing this marketing task or I'm replying to comments on my social media or, etc. So you don't even have to remember necessarily all the little bits and pieces if it's something basic like that because it's just going to your calendar is going to remind you time to switch off and do your marketing thing instead. And you can set up alerts for that. I mean, I know I said I don't like notifications, but in that case, if you
You're
want to use
backtracking.
notifications to get you, to the next thing, how many free calendars are there out? Every computer program, every, has some calendar system inside of it, and you can just use the one that's already there.
Yeah, my Google Calendar looks like somebody threw up on it, but it makes sense to me. That's what's important, right?
As long as
Um,
you know what it means.
yeah, that's right. All right, so I do have one more question that just popped up into my mind because this is super important when I teach email marketing, and that's kind of goes along with systems that you were mentioning. Is like, are there ways to automate these things? Are there things that should be automated that you can to make it? Because to me, I'm of mind of anything that you can automate in a smart way is going to make your life a lot easier because then you don't have to take the extra time to go in and do a manual task. Like, for example, and then I'll let you answer the question is like when somebody first signs up for your newsletter, your email list, like your onboarding sequence should be loaded in and automatic. Like, there should be no manual labor on that. Now, you do have to manually send out your emails after that, but like when somebody first gets on your list, if your onboarding sequence is not automated, your life's going to be a living nightmare because it might be manageable for the first 10, 20 people. What happens when you have 500 people or 1,000 people or you got 50 new people signing up every day? Are you going to manually export, import, and then run them through the system? Like, no, you'll have zero time to do anything else. So, like, what are your thoughts on being able to automate some of this stuff and like maybe where it could fit in?
I love automation. And especially once you have a system down, you don't even have to fit it in because it's done now. It's automated, right? The thing about automation is mostly it's one and done. Not completely. There's always going to be things you have to go back and tweak. Someday you're going to want a new email sequence or, whatever. You're going to need to add a sentence or two, etc. Um, but for the most part, like you never have to think about it again. So absolutely do that. I wouldn't even include that as like I would do that during your marketing time that you've time blocked for, but that's not even a regular hat that you're going to have to wear consistently. It's just like a when you're trying a new thing, that's part of the time block, for that marketing period on your calendar. But everything, yeah, I mean social media, big fan of scheduling social media posts. Um, I'm a big fan of you can even schedule emails. If you are replying to, like a personal email, especially with pitches and stuff, if you're sending out pitches to the media, um, scheduling things in advance, that's not automated so much, but it's at least kind of scheduling it ahead of time. Um, Absolutely, it fits into that. Anything you can do to simplify your life, that's really the message. Like anything you can do to simplify, and automated is as simple as it gets.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, the theme of this is definitely simplicity. Simple, not easy, but simple does make things easier. All right, so I think we covered a lot. I had a lot of questions. You gave great answers and insight. Is there anything else that you'd like to add, uh, reharp on before we tell people where they can go find you? Maybe I don't remember this. You might have some goodies for the attendees and stuff like that. If you want to mention that, we can put the link
Yes,
under.
yes, there
So
will be.
take the floor.
I have for the VIP students of your summit, I will be giving a free access to my download that is about pre-order bonuses. It's pre-order bonuses that actually convert. And this does tie in a little bit um, with what we've talked about in that when and this is a good thing that we need to mention, and it's a really great close. When you are doing something that is simple marketing, because especially minimalist marketing, because you're maybe doing less than the other guy, you want every interaction you do have to count, right? You want to be as intentional as you can with each piece. You don't want to waste your time. Um, and so I have created a huge handout that talks about pre-order bonuses, which is pre-orders is a great way that authors do sales and get extra sales and get extra visibility and make bestseller lists and many other wonderful things. But often I see pre-order bonus packages that authors do that are a little less than ideal. And so I've kind of broken down what makes a good pre-order bonuses and then some ideas for what works well, especially for creative genres like fiction. Um, and even a little tutorial on some pieces that authors don't often think about, like copyright issues and some legality issues that come into play when we're kind of adding extra bonuses onto our book, and they're not always things that we own the rights to, but you have to remember about. So that is going to be for all of the people who get the VIP pass for your summit.
That's great. That's awesome. I don't think at least for me too, a lot of people don't maybe think about pre-order bonuses or anything like that. It's just like, hey, here's a pre-order. You get the book when
Mhm.
it comes out. But like, what about some extra incentive for people to actually take the action?
Exactly. And
Right?
yes, and the key is they have to be desirable things, right? So I
Yeah.
see a lot of people do like, here's a bookmark. Like, I don't really want your bookmark actually. Like, there's nothing about you offering a bookmark that would make me buy today. I might as well just wait and buy later or not buy at all. The whole point is to, to get people to offer something that is so good, that has so much value on its own outside of being connected to your book, that your reader's like, "Ooh, I really want that bonus in particular."
Awesome. I think that's an awesome gift. Thanks for giving that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so cool. So where can people go check you out if they want to learn more about you, go see what you do, see your face on your own website, which I've seen. It's beautiful.
It's
So
EmilyEnger.com. So EMILYEN as in Nancy, GER.com.
Awesome. Well, Miss Emily, thank you so much for coming on here. Pregnant with two kids already in this world, so I appreciate you taking the time and energy to come on here and do this. For we've been going for maybe just a little bit, maybe at the hour mark, so this is perfect. We'll have all those links down. We'll have her email or her website link down below, and then for anybody who purchases the Premium Pass VIP bundle in the back end, we'll have her really cool pre-order bonus thing in there that she's going to give us. And yeah, I think that's it for me. Is that it for you?
It is. Thank you so much, Philip. It was nice to see you again. And wonderful chatting with you as
Yeah,
always.
you too. Well, hopefully everybody learned something. I learned a lot. I always do. Selfishly, I love doing these interviews because I always get new insight. It's like
Yeah.
I become the student, even though I'm the one interviewing the person. So these are always really, really great. So once again, I appreciate you taking the time, and everybody, hope you learned something, and we'll see you guys the next one.
Have a great day.